Hey there, and welcome to the Catching Up with Casey show, where we talk about anything and everything that has to do with building cohesive, vision-driven teams. I am Casey Watts, school impact strategist and the host of this show. Now, if you are here, then you inevitably are an instructional leader who wants to make change happen, even when change seems impossible. And you can do that if you have cohesive, vision-driven teams that have done clarity work. They know exactly where they're headed and how they're going to get there. These teams have done identity work, and they've built their self and social awareness skills. And they have done collaboration work, and they know how to move beyond faux collaboration to get to true collaboration where change happens and where people get on board. I'm so excited to bring to you conversations that help you to do exactly that. The work that needs to be done to build cohesive, vision-driven teams. Now, with all of that said, let's dive into today's conversation. Well, hey there, everybody, and welcome to today's episode. We are visiting with Peter DeWitt and Mike Nelson, and I'm super excited to have you guys on the show. Welcome.
Hey, thank you for having us.
It's great to be here, Casey.
Yeah, I was telling Peter before we even got started, been following his work for years, and he was like, whoa, wait a minute. And I said, since I was like 15, because I was interested in education at 15, right? Weren't we all?
Absolutely.
Yeah. But on a more, actually less serious note, I wanted to ask you guys a really random question, and you might have to think about it pretty hard. Be ready to answer, though. So before I hopped on this show, my kids and my husband and I were in the kitchen. My daughter's baking some dog treats. My son came in and he was like, "You ever just want bread?" And we all three were like, "Yeah, of course, we just want bread." And so my husband said when he was growing up, one of his favorite snacks was a piece of bread with just mayonnaise on it, a mayonnaise sandwich. And all of us were like, "Ew, that's disgusting." And he said, "Don't knock it till you try it." So I got to know, what's a quirky snack that people might turn their nose up at?
So I'm going to go first because I know Mike has some gourmet thing that he's going to be able to share. I honestly, Casey, I haven't thought about this in years. So my dad passed when I was 11. And I remember when he was alive, you just totally made me think of this. He would take Ritz crackers, a piece of cheese, mustard, and butter, and we would eat it as a little Ritz cracker sandwich. And I swear to you, I haven't thought about that in years until you just said, when you said bread with mayonnaise, I was like, that's disgusting. And then instantly I thought, oh my gosh, Ritz crackers, mustard, cheese, and butter. And we used to have that as a snack.
Delicacy. Now, where did you grow up?
I grew up in Queensbury, New York, which is in the foothills of the Adirondacks.
Okay.
So it's about, I was actually closer to Montreal than I was to New York City. So
Oh, wow.
an hour north of Albany.
Okay, so who knows? Other people may have indulged in that snack in that area.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's quite a snack, Peter. Way to go on that one. I think you knocked it out of the park with the best snack. Mine, I'm going to go a whole different, because I'm not going to answer the question. So I'm just going to just name it right now. So I'll be one of those people that's like, gosh, would Mike answer just one question straight up? But no, I'm not going to. So I do like to cook. I'm not a gourmet cook like Peter says, but I do like to cook. And so I read lots of magazines and different articles. So I'm in Washington State now, and we're filming this kind of right after lunchtime in my area. And so there's different ways in which you can make a grilled cheese. So you could put butter. It's probably traditional on the bread before you put it in the pan, or maybe some people put oil. But Cooks Illustrated introduced me to the concept, if you want that crispiness on the outside, you're going to get a better effect with mayonnaise. just a little light coating of mayonnaise on the bread instead of butter, you will have a more evenly coated crispness to your grilled cheese. Just a little tip on this, on this show today, Casey. I'm just giving it up to you.
I mean, we can close the show now.
I know, Casey. Did you see what he did there? He did two things. Number one, he said he's not gourmet, but let me tell you about the magazines that I'm reading and what I learned. And he's also kissing up to your husband at the same time because he's saying, yeah, bread with mayonnaise. He's actually doing three things. The third thing is, let's make Peter look really corny for the snack that he had when he was a kid.
Oh, let me tell you what, this is one of the best starts to the show. I feel like I need to start this show with this every single time.
And I can name 4 and 5 if Peter wants me to go about his thing, because really I'm in the mastermind behind this thing. And so I can say, oh, really, there's the fourth one, but I won't, Casey, I'll stop.
Okay. I can see how this is going to go now. I feel like we're getting punchy. We've, been talking most of the day today.
Listen, I'm ready for it. I know my audience is ready for it. So let's go. So on I guess the more serious note, I don't know if you can get more serious after that kind of conversation, but I want you guys to tell our audience about yourselves. Either one of you could start off telling us a little bit about who you are, what you do, your aspirations, etc.
Well, my trajectory to the world of education started at our family dinner table because my parents said conversation was about education, and somewhere within that conversation about education, Casey, was there's no more noble of a profession than that of an educator. So I have 2 older brothers, and all 3 of us went into some form of education. And so that is, what really solidified it. And for me in my career, I'm the traditional path from teacher to principal to district office, and then 14 and a half years as a superintendent in the town that raised me. So I've been incredibly blessed.
Yeah, that's amazing. And now you are authoring, presenting, all the things, trying to spread the message of the work that you did.
Who would have thought? I feel very blessed, and Peter has made lots of opportunities available to me in the last about 3 years.
That's awesome. Okay,
and
Peter
still brings up the bread with mayonnaise, even after all of that stuff. He still brings up, "Hey, Casey, let me kiss up to your husband a little bit." So I am, it's interesting. I have kind of an opposite story of Mike's because I was retained in 4th grade. My dad passed when I was in 5th. My mom went back to get her GED when I was in 6th grade. And then I actually barely graduated from high school. I graduated 4th from last in my class. And thankfully, on my 3rd attempt at a community college, I had a cross-country coach, because I was a runner, that said, I need you to go into the Learning Assistance Center because you're not going to be a professional runner. And I honestly walked in with a 1.7 GPA and walked out with a 3.86 that semester. So I became a teacher. I taught for 11 years in some high poverty city schools. And I learned a lot about that just because I had it hard, there were lots of kids that had it much more difficult than I did. So that was a good lesson for me to learn, sad for the kids. But then I was a principal for 8 years, and I've been an author, consultant, leadership coach for the past 10 years. I took a leave of absence to leave my position as a principal to start working with John Hattie. And John definitely took me under his wing, and he's been a mentor of mine for the past 10 years. And I was a visible learning trainer for a few years. And then I had a book come out called Collaborative Leadership that was based on John's work. And it was the first book that people kind of looked at making it kind of made John's research practical at that time. And Johnny said that. So I've written books, and I've been coaching and partnering with organizations and everything else over the years. And then 3.5 years ago, I met Mike when he asked me to be the lead advisor for the state of Washington. And have to admit, he's a brilliant and amazing guy. As much as I bust on him, he is somebody that I looked at and said, I really want to collaborate deeper with this guy. So he is my first co-author.
Yeah, that's exciting. Very, very exciting. And I know that all of us that get our hands on the books are going to be blessed by your work. And Yeah, I'm excited. So actually, let's talk about this because we shared a little bit about it before we got started with the show. The book that you guys have just written is actually available for physical purchase today.
Mhm.
Yes. So
It is.
tell us all about this newest book, Leading with Intention, because that's what this show is all about. I want to promote your book, and I know our audience wants to hear all about it.
Well, I think, I'd love to give a quick overview and then Peter will dive deeper. In our eyes, this has been a true collaboration and a lot of fun back and forth, as Peter talks about. But for the people listening, Leading with Intention really, in our minds, is just full of incredible research around key topics, from self-awareness to human interconnectedness to how do you network and build strong professional learning groups. So full of research, it's full of stories. And so threaded throughout each of the chapters and each of the key research bits are these stories, which all of a sudden you read this research and as a reader, you kind of go through, okay, I wonder what that means for me. But you immediately get put right into a situation from one of us in a situation that we've had as a leader, and we take you on a journey, a story journey throughout how we work through that. And then the third component, Casey, is really we want the reader to engage with us, truly with us throughout the book. So it's not a workbook that says you have to do this, but it's really, here's some engagement prompts. We want it to be engagement prompts. So as we journey with the reader throughout this book, we truly believe that the reader becomes the third author. And it's a one-of-a-kind first edition copy of Leading with Intention. And we have a whole bunch of one-of-a-kind books throughout the world.
Love it. That's amazing. So I just want to pause real quick because something you've said a couple of things that really stand out to me that are so unique about this book. It's a journey with the reader. Think about how often, I think that's one of the reasons not as many leaders pick up books, because it's so demanding to have to read all of the content without understanding how in actuality you can apply it.
Mm-hmm.
But with your stories, like you said, you're taking them on a journey. And then I love this idea of your reader as just a third author. How exciting that is. I'm getting chills. As soon as this is over, I'm going to be clicking purchase. I've been waiting for the physical copy. Okay.
Yeah, to me, it's actually very personal writing a book, right? Like I think people want to know the process and that kind of thing. And when Mike and I decided to co-author the book together, we actually said it in parts of the book too, that it's kind of a reflection of the journey we went through. Being a lead advisor, I want to kind of set the picture, because we started working together just after the vaccine came out and those kind of things. And you're doing a lot of Zooms. And I was going to be meeting with Mike and our colleagues, and it was probably once every 2 weeks that we were meeting up for a couple of hours. And I found myself looking forward to the Zooms. And that doesn't always happen, right? So you feel that. And then when Mike and I were talking about what we wanted to focus on, the intentionality piece really came out quite a bit, because, we both coach, we both have been leaders, we both, facilitate workshops. And there are people that just don't always know why they're in the room. They don't know why they're at the meeting. They don't know, they're talked at, they're not talked with. And we really wanted to kind of create a different atmosphere for people. We send out pre-engagement letters with learning intentions and success criteria. We ask them to consider their own learning needs before they come to a session. And because we were doing a hybrid approach and monthly we were meeting with people, either virtually or in person, it gave us the opportunity to learn as we were going on, because I think that's another thing that people need to know when you're writing a book. Mike and I were not writing the book as experts writing the book. We were actually writing a book about something we wanted to learn more about. How do we become more intentional in the work that we're doing? Because we felt badly for people who were coming to things. They were busy. They didn't know where to go first. They didn't even know why they were there. And so when we're doing pre-engagement letters and we're using Mentimeter as the online engagement tool during the sessions, and we're doing formative assessment, we're doing exit tickets. And Mike always talks about the dash, what's going to happen in between, like after they leave us and before they come back to us. So this book was inspired by the conversations Mike and I were having around how to develop much more impactful, not just professional learning for workshops, but also to give leaders the idea of what can our meeting spaces look like. And I think, and I'm glad you talked about the stories, because there is research. I mean, we both have the research base. I've worked with John for a long time, but there's also the practicality of the stories that Mike brings in. And most of the stories are Mike's, and they're very powerful because they illustrate how he has done this work. And as a building principal, these are things that I did too. So getting people to read a book too, that it's your experience of how you've actually engaged in this work too, is really important. And so then that's where we started to say, so what do we need to start off with? And we became intentional because we started to think about leadership self-awareness. Do leaders know sometimes the actions they're taking? And do they understand how important not just internal self-awareness is, but external self-awareness? How people view us as leaders, but also how people view our initiatives and the strategies we're using. There's a lot of work that's around trust, and there are 3 core drivers of trust. Authenticity, are people seeing your authentic you? Empathy, do people think you care about them? And logic, do people understand the logic behind the decisions? You can only do that when you've got this heightened awareness, both internal and external, because then it's not even just, it's about how are you articulating this and communicating it. And then that's where we started to weave in what Mike had coined as human interconnectedness, because I've watched him. I joke, he thinks I'm joking about the whole gourmet chef thing, but it's really not. I've been to his house for dinner, how he prepares a meal and the thought he puts into it. And it's the art of gathering. That's a book that we both have read. It's getting people to understand why they're sitting around the table and feeling like they're invited there and that their voice matters. And that's something Mike has really highlighted quite a bit when he's talking about human interconnectedness within the book.
Yeah. I think something to point out that I don't know that a lot of people recognize, even in this conversation right here, the number of times that you both have personally said my name makes me feel like I have a seat at this table, even though I'm the host of this show. But as my guest, you're bringing me into this conversation just simply by stating my name. And I know that that's something that you do intentionally, but you probably have practiced it and made it a habit. So now it just becomes something that's natural to you. And I think that's part of, too, that human interconnectedness. We have to practice these things, these self-awareness and social awareness skills, in order for them to become a part of who we are and a part of what we do. And to your point, I have this weird habit I'm going to tell you guys about. Do you play Wordle?
So, yep, we do, Casey. Not that we're competitive about it with each other, but
I think I'm winning between.
I'm still here.
He might have an actual stats on this.
Let me just show you something, because somebody sent me a gift because of,
oh my gosh,
how gifted I might be at Wordle. So he thinks he's winning.
Yeah.
T-shirt that says something a little.
I got it in too, Casey, and I think that was important to share with my friends that I got it in.
So funny.
Sorry, we're getting off track.
Let's go back to your question, Casey.
Peter, no, we send each other emails that I'll say good morning to you and send the Wordle score.
Oh, that's
anyway.
Awesome.
Sorry.
I haven't done that yet with somebody else. I'm getting close because I play it every single day. It just becomes a habit. Well, Lindsay Deacon and I were talking the other day, and we were talking about habit stacking. And so we both were like, man, we're in writing books, because I'm starting my very first book. And so I'm finding that it is it's not at all what you imagine it's going to be. The process is highly intricate, and it's fun, but it's interesting. And so one of the habits that I was trying to stack was, what can I do while I play Wordle, or how can I utilize Wordle to actually write something? So the other day I had this idea, okay, when I finish and I have the word and I figured it out, I'm going to go into my notes app and I'm just going to use that one word and develop some kind of story or idea from that. And I think I can share the word from yesterday, right? Like that's like, you can't use it anymore.
Right.
And I think the word was groom.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Okay. And so I was just thinking, what I was writing about was this idea of how so many leaders who maybe were classroom teachers are groomed to become leaders or groomed to take a leadership position. The problem is that they're not being groomed. And I hate to use that term, but I think it happens too frequently. But they're being groomed in the wrong way. And they're being groomed at all of those surface level points that don't really affect how you're going to apply skills that are necessary as a leader. So we're not grooming self and social awareness skills. We're just grooming to the extent of, can we get through the interview? Can you become the person that I am in this position and take over in the same way that I have approached this position? So I just think it's so crucial, if you're going to lead intentionally, that piece that you guys have hit so hard is this idea, number one, of taking people on the journey through things that you actually have implemented as practitioners. You're writing it as practitioners, and you're thinking about this heightened awareness and human interconnectedness. So I think I kind of went on a tangent there, but all of that to say, it's really important what you guys wrote about.
We like to think so.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about like some key things that you hope readers will gain after they've read it, and who specifically, like if you're thinking, here's our target audience for this book, who would those people be?
Well, I'll jump, and then Peter can jump in as well. The interesting thing, Casey, is once you write the book, which I liken to a marathon. So you probably have written a lot of things. So like a 5K, I could go out and do it. Maybe not my best time if I hadn't been running at all, but I can go do a 5K almost anytime. 6K or 10K I might have to do, which is the 6 mile. Might have to do a little bit of training. Half marathon I have to do a little bit more. But people think once they do a half marathon, which I might liken to a magazine article or maybe a chapter of a book, that you can immediately then jump to a marathon. Well, a half marathon, you have to do another 13.1 miles. And the book was that to me. And you're in the process, and then you turn it in. And so just this morning, Peter and I were bantering. It was like, should well, it was mine. I think Peter went, ooh, I don't know that I would say do that, Mike. But it's like, should chapter 4 have come before chapter 3? And so I'm already in my head like, okay, the UPS man hadn't even come to my door with the first copy of the book yet. And I'm already thinking, did we do it exactly how? So all that to say, the essence of the self-awareness, internal and external, and how we approach that. Like, I'm still chewing on it, and I'm the author of the book, and I just think it's way too good. The human interconnectedness goes way deeper than just what you might hear around relationships. And then we really guide people into, how do you build networks? What do you need to be? Who do you need to be as a person in order to be a good team member, a good person in building a network or a collective or to collaborate with one another? Then guiding them right into the, here's the cycle of inquiry. What are your key priorities? What's your problem of practice? What's your evidence? How are you reflecting on that in this cycle? And then professional learning, the key elements of how professional learning looks, and we guide the reader through that. So this evolution, I find myself going back to my own book over and over again to learn something new, which is crazy to me when I was the author, I was the runner. That's my insight for you. Peter, how about you?
I think chapter 4 is perfect where it is.
Peter thinks it's perfect where it is. I'm going, oh, no.
I find that the human interconnectedness piece, I feel like, has been a strength of mine over the years. It's just, and it is for Mike as well. The internal and external self-awareness, I'm not always so sure. Like internally, I think I know myself pretty well. I do the How We Feel app from Mark Brackett every morning and every afternoon. I meditate, those kind of things. But I still like get outside my perception of a situation that might happen is skewed from time to time, depending on who it's with. So when I'm reading through and rereading through external self-awareness, it really has inspired me to think about it in different ways about what is the perception. When you're writing a book by yourself, you don't necessarily have those discussions. You might have them with your editor, and you're trying out the content when you're facilitating workshops. But when you're writing the book with a partner, with your co-author, and you're going back and forth, not every conversation is perfect. You know what I mean? And having Mike look at me and say, I don't know about that, or could you tell me more about that, forces you to just start thinking deeper. And that's what leaders need, right? Leaders need people that are going to not just say, oh, yes, that's great. It's tell me about that decision. Tell me about why you're doing what you're doing. And I also think that the professional learning piece is something that we are always striving to get better at. So honestly, within the book, we're trying to model what we do, but we still think we can get better at it and how we do it. And I'll give you some examples. We deeply care about that people know why they're there, but we also deeply care about giving people processing time. So when we're facilitating workshops, we're really trying to do 50-50, 50% content time and 50% processing time around protocols. So you can walk away with a deeper understanding. But inviting people about how they show up, right? And you're right, saying your name, Casey, is purposeful because we do feel like in this moment in time, it's the three of us, right? And we want you to feel that. We don't want this to be the Peter and Mike show. We want you to be able to talk about your expertise and things and show that too. One of the things that we did with a statewide program that we were kicking off is Mike really had an interest in, I don't want people to just feel like they're welcome. I really want people to feel like we care about them. So we created a Google intake form. We didn't just ask their name or what their learning needs were. We asked them what their favorite drink was. We asked them what their favorite quotation was. And we asked them some other questions. When we did the kickoff and people came in, we knew them by name. And because we had studied their pictures when they were coming in, they got a glass when they walked in. They got a journal because we want them to be reflective. They walked over to me. They got a pen. And I said, we're going to start at 5 o'clock. Please go in. But one of the things they got when they also came in was their favorite drink. And our colleague Kim and her husband did a load of work trying to get the drinks too. And Mike and I were at the store trying to pick up the last minute drinks. And I remember looking at Mike and I said, wow, some of these are really high maintenance. And honestly, he looked over at me and he said, isn't it great? I was like, oh no. He said, isn't it great? We asked them what their favorite drink was, and they felt like they could tell us. And I suddenly went, oh, I feel like this big. And it just changed my perspective because those simple things are what we can do every day in leadership. We don't have to necessarily get their favorite drink, but we can find out some special things about them and make sure we're asking about those things when we're going in and when we're working with people. And the professional learning side is that important. There's school districts that spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to send their teachers and leaders out to conferences, and they come back and there really isn't huge impact. And we want things to be different. We want our professional learning to be impactful in a way that and the one thing we hear quite often is, you're really listening to us, or we feel like we're a partner with you guys. We're not coming in saying, this is the content you have to have, and this is the way we're going to do it. We're actually having these deep conversations. So when people are within the professional learning session that we're working on, they're walking away knowing that they can actually engage in the strategies and have impact and come back and tell us about it too.
Mm-hmm.
That was probably a lot of information.
No, it's so good. And you're really, so I'm about to be presenting at several conferences this summer, which I know summer conferences are a little bit hard to be super intentional about that interconnectedness, but I think it's doable. You just have to be really strategic about how you do it and simplify a little bit to amplify your impact. But I think so often, especially as leaders or as, well, I guess leaders of any kind, because if you are a principal or an instructional coach or even someone who's presenting, you have this, authoritative position, I guess. You have a position of what people would assume is experience and expertise. And for the most part, people do in those positions. But I think because of that, we take on this this burden of trying to live up to that expectation. But in living up to that, what we feel like is an expectation, which is probably just, this mirage that we've created for ourselves, we forget that there are people in front of us that we actually have to connect with. And we forget that there are people in front of us who we want to pull in as part of this story and make it about them and not about us. I think that's really hard for leaders sometimes. So I'm excited about how this book can support them really getting in touch with who they are leading and make it about their people.
Yeah. I was just going to say, only if they care about doing it. I mean, I don't want to be so blunt, but
Right.
There are things that I learned how to do as a leader. I didn't always have the greatest role models, but when I took over as a new principal of a school and the secretary handed me the yearbook and said, I want you to study the yearbook. And she wrote the spouses' names next to the teachers. I studied the yearbook, so I knew who they were. And I had started I had unofficially started in April, even though I was still teaching. I would go over one night a week to get to know people in the school. And then I officially started in July, and I knew everybody by the time I got there because of the fact that I was studying the yearbook. So I think my point here is that you can do this work if you're going to be open to learning from the people around you that can give you good insight as well.
Yeah. There's a book called Teaching Kids to Care. And sometimes I think, is there a book out there about teaching leaders to care or teaching teachers to care?
And showing them how to care, right?
Yeah, right. Exactly. Absolutely. Okay. So there's one more thing I want to ask you guys about, because this is like this show is all about building cohesive, vision-driven teams. How do you envision your newest book, Leading with Intention, helping leaders to think about how to create cohesive teams?
No, I think it's a great question. I think sometimes, if you, I'm back to running again. Let's just say it's a 100-meter dash. I think sometimes leaders want to start at the 50-meter mark and not think about what's the real start. So where's the real start? And I'm going to do a quick story. So in my career, I was transferred to an elementary school that from an elementary school. As an elementary school teacher or principal that was pretty successful in leading them into pretty strong results, and particularly in reading, and was moved without being asked into another elementary school into that same region that was the lowest performing. The staff didn't have any say in it. From the staff I was leading to where I was going, parents had no input. So you think of, here's the situation that the leader goes in, and it was results driven. I could have started at the 50-yard line or 50-meter mark and just said, okay, here's the results, here's where we're going, and here's new curriculum, here's this. That wasn't really the start. Yeah. Where was I in the connectedness? Where was I on the self-awareness trajectory? And so, the thing that we did, it was a poor performing school. If you would have driven up, you would have predicted that it was a poor performing school. The landscape was terrible. The only thing that was clear was the principal had a signature with where they were to park in the front of the school. Well, first thing we did was scratch that out. I parked in the gravel area. That's number one. Number two is using the highest grade level, which was sixth grade in this elementary school. We with their parents, before the spring before I started, came together and we re-landscaped with all donations, the whole front of the school with new planting, new beauty bark, new everything. So the front of the school looked different. Did that have anything to do with the 50-yard line on the demanding of let's think through our instructional? It didn't. But what that built was we have a man who cares about us as a leader and cares about our school, cares about what it looks like. All of a sudden, the pride level came out and we began to move down closer to that 50-yard line where I could do the work, where I think most leaders start, if that story makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. It was super inspiring. And speaks definitely to your character. And I know people were so fortunate to have you as their leader on campuses. Okay, Peter, any thoughts to add to that?
No, I think Mike was, no, I think that right there is why I love working with a man. I
know. I like, where's the real start? That is probably, well, I have so many takeaways from this conversation, but I think that is probably one of my biggest takeaways is if you are going to build cohesive, vision-driven teams and you are going to lead with intention, where's the real start? Mm-hmm. Perfect way to say that. Okay. So as we close up conversation, tell everyone, we're going to tell them three things. Number one, tell them where they can get the book. Number two, talk about your Instructional Leadership Collective. And then number three, what is something you hope they will take away from today's conversation?
I'll do one.
I knew it.
You can get the book from Corwin Press right now. And it's a great read. We would love for you to get it, and they're putting it in the mail right too.
We started the Instructional Leadership Collective because Mike inspired me to do so. And I'm not kidding you. Over the time that we were working together, we just started talking about what we wanted out of an organization. So we started one together and officially started on October 1st. Mike's going to be working with me more full-time, as of July 1st. And I'm really excited about that. But the Instructional Leadership Collective, there are a few things that we're doing, right? We have a newsletter that goes out every month where we really want to invite people to the newsletter we want to hear their voices too. We do coaching. We facilitate workshops, mostly a hybrid approach, where we have long-term relationships, where we're with an organization a couple of times in person, and we might be remote the other months. So we're doing that. We focus on academic plans and strategic plans. There are just so many ways that what's exciting about this, and I guess it's why I'm not fully answering your question, is that we're still growing as an organization as well. We have the Global Instructional Leadership Network that will start in October that people can join us. And it's going to go from October of 24 to May of 25. And it's going to be a monthly hybrid approach. So we're doing that. Mike is the not just my co-author for Leading with Intention. We're working on a new book, but he's also my co-host for the Leaders Coaching Leaders podcast for Corwin. And he's also going to start being my blogger for Education Week's Finding Common Ground. So the partnership is deepening that way. He is somebody that I have learned a tremendous amount from. And I've said this in other interviews. When you collaborate, I've always loved collaborating. I've been very fortunate to collaborate with a lot of people. But when you find somebody that's as good as Mike to collaborate with, and you can learn from, and you can just kind of do that push and pull all the time, and you probably have that with Lindsay, it's really important to foster that relationship. And just, so there are a lot of ways that it's growing. We're doing a lot of work worldwide. So we do a lot of work in Canada. We're going to Australia the end of August, early September. We're doing work with places like Education Scotland. And so, yeah, we're kind of expanding around the world as well. So did that answer your question? How about I just end with, but I love bread with mayonnaise.
Okay. Yeah, you can end with that. And I'm going to end with, actually, Mike is he's sporting all of the Instructional Leadership Collective here and the poster in the background. So I think Peter might need to step up his game a little bit. Bravo.
I can't wear I couldn't wear, we have t-shirts. I couldn't wear a t-shirt on with you. That would not be formal enough. And I can't wear the same shirt at the same time, right? Because then, I don't know.
You could. Listen, I'm not wearing any shoes and I'm wearing joggers with a really nice shirt. So there are no rules anymore when you go online.
There you go.
All right. Well, thank y'all so much for joining me for this conversation. To my audience, I know you hopefully benefited from this conversation. You can benefit even more if you go to the show notes and you check out all of the links. I'm going to have everything that they mentioned in the links in the show notes. So be sure to check it out. So guys, thanks for coming on. It was great to have you.
Thanks so much, Casey. That was great.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. We'll catch you later. Bye, everybody. Hey there. Thanks for joining this episode. I would love for you to do me 3 solid favors before you head out. Number 1, subscribe to this show. I've got a lot of great guests and content coming up, and I don't want you to miss any of it. Number 2, share this show. Share it with your like-minded colleagues and friends and those leaders who are eager to build cohesive, vision-driven teams. And finally, connect with me on all the social media platforms. You can find me at Catch Up with Casey on Instagram, YouTube, and LinkedIn. Until next time, go off and create teams that leave people feeling inspired, empowered, and eager for more each day.